Alright, so first thing I gotta do is apologize. I have not made any updates with this thing in a long time. I have been working on it a little bit from here to there. I've actually got to a point where I've got pretty decent updates to do here, so I'm just gonna kind of start from the beginning, kind of give anybody that hasn't watched the rest of the videos just some basic like the background on this. So this is a Factory 5 GTM. So Factory 5 kit car builder, real popular for doing like the Cobra replica kit cars. The GTM is not based on any particular car. It's their own design. Does share a lot of, or uses a lot of parts from like a C5 Corvette. So up there we've got the body, it's all fiberglass. And here obviously is the chassis. So as you can see here, so it's Corvette, kind of Corvette suspension with some coilover shocks instead of like the standard like leaf spring setup that these usually come with. So yeah, so I'm going to kind of start from the beginning. One of the things that's different about this car, if you haven't been following, is that instead of using the LS series engines for powertrain, I'm actually using an all-electric setup. The drive unit, which is going to be back here, is a Tesla drive unit out of a like a P85, but not a dual motor P85. So a rear wheel drive P85 and what they call a Sport Plus drive unit. These things take in about 400 kilowatts worth of energy that ends up being about 540 horsepower as designed from Tesla. There are ways to overdrive them a little bit. It's all set up in the controller I'll have for it. So realistically, hopefully between 540 to 600 horsepower overall. Drivetrain loss should be almost none because there's really nothing more than a single gear reduction unit inside there. One thing I did do with this, a couple things actually. So first off, the motor here itself is mounted opposite of how it would normally be in a Tesla. So in a Tesla, the drive motor and inverter would be behind the axle. In this case, there's no room back here. There's a little bracket that sits there, but it just wouldn't work the way the frame is designed. So basically what I've done is I have replumbed the insides of this thing. So you can see like the little Tesla logo is upside down. Either way, so there is a small little oil pump inside here. It's just it's not self-priming or anything. It basically has to sit in a level of fluid in order for it to lubricate everything and move fluid around the gear sets. So what I've done is I've modified that so that we've got, I don't know if you can see it down here, but there is a drain down there. So the drain is going to be basically pumped up to an oil reservoir. Oil reservoir is going to feed here. So I've added this. So this ties into where the factory oil pump is. And then this is kind of like an overflow from the reservoir. So if it gets too full, it'll just kind of trickle back down into there. And then this guy down here, which as you can see, there was already this boss was already here, but it wasn't tapped, it wasn't drilled out or anything. But that'll be my new oil level port, essentially, where check oil level to make sure it's correct. So either way, what I did to make this thing work, basically upside down. Some people run these things in reverse. And there is a reverse oil pump gear assembly that's available for them. I decided that I liked this idea better. The other modification I did to this is it does have a Quafe limited slip diff inside it. So this guy, that is the factory, as you can see, open diff, standard gear, spider gear set. So yeah, replaced with a Quafe LSD. In the middle of building some motor mount brackets. So that one is going to, it's kind of not where it's going to be, but similar there on the front. Back here, I've got some laser cut steel to some motor mounts that I designed and sent off to a company, I think it was Send Cut Send, to have them, duplicate what I needed. And I just need to weld them up. I'm out of argon currently, so I will need to be getting that refilled before I can go on. A couple other things back here. Got the, so this bar right here, you see it's cut. Used to connect right up here, but the actual motor, the drive unit, is too wide, so I had to move that. This is going to end up being welded here, and then once the motor is actually mounted, I'm going to take another bar and go from here up to basically where it used to be. So a small modification, nothing crazy in terms of like the frame itself. Let's see what else is back here. Okay, so these 3 black plates, we'll call them, that's where 3 of the larger of the batteries are going to be mounted. 2 small batteries are probably going to end up being back here. There's a small little cage that comes around the back part. Probably end up having 2 small batteries back here. Small batteries are about this size. So there's one in the what would be the tunnel, and then another behind the passenger seat. There is another here, kind of in the middle of the center console, essentially. And I've got one of the bigger ones is up here. So one of the things I ran into with these is finding a space for them. Here's the rest of the batteries. So these 2 small ones are the ones that'll go in the way back. And then those 3 go vertically in front of the drive unit. These batteries are out of a I think this was a 2017 Chevy Volt. There's actually 2 sets of batteries from 2 separate Volts. They're going to be, each set of batteries is run in series within, right? So the 1 car's worth of batteries is series, and then so two cars worth of batteries will end up being in parallel. So these things, kind of like the nominal voltage for them for each pack is around 360 volts. Fully charged battery will be closer to 400 volts. So basically 2 400 volt packs in parallel should supply somewhere around 1100 to 1200 amps to the drive unit. So it's kind of how the math works out on that a little bit. Let's see, so where are we at? Other, kind of the basics behind this. So the kit itself, steel, welded steel frame that came that way from Factory 5. There's all these aluminum panels here, and honestly, there's a lot there. There's a huge pile of them here. The seat backs are there, or firewall technically. There's another piece here, a couple more pieces of aluminum. So there's a lot of aluminum that goes on this thing. It's kind of time consuming, really time consuming. So basically what you do with this is you take a panel, so like this panel here, and let's see, this guy goes in here somewhere. So that panel, it goes there. So you mark the panel, you drill holes every couple inches. and then you drill matching holes in the frame. And then what I've been doing is I'm coating this in it's like a kind of roll-on or spray-on paint that dampens any noise and vibration, and also gives a little bit of heat rejection properties. So coat it in that stuff, and then so this is where that piece goes. So then it gets seam sealed, which is basically just like really tough silicone sealant. I think it's silicone. And then riveted in place. So like this floor piece here, that's been done with that. So sealant, rivets, and then on top of that, of course, will be anything else in this case, there will be like some noise dampening material, roll on, like the thicker pads, and then of course carpet on top of it. So a lot of that is going on with this car. That panel there, for instance, and all these exterior, I used black rivets so they didn't stand out quite so much. And these you won't see because they'll be covered with carpet. So yeah, so once the chassis is done, then of course the body is definitely not an easy drop-on piece, unless you don't care what it looks like. Factory 5, there's a lot of really rough spots in the mold where the two pieces came together. So that'll all need to be ground down, refilled with fiberglass, sanded smooth, so on and so forth. So lots of work when it comes to the body stuff, just like little stuff like those holes, that hole there and there. So that's normally for the fuel filler. Clearly not going to have a fuel filler. The normal deal has this back part cut out for an exhaust. I won't have an exhaust, so I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do there yet. I want to do something, obviously, but I just don't know. So either way, that's coming, right? So there's a lot of work to do there, but first we've got to finish this guy. So current progress. What have I been working on lately? Primarily working on fitting batteries and the weird stuff that the chassis was not designed to have the way that I have it set up. So normally like AC compressor would be on the motor. In this case, I've got a high voltage 400 volt AC compressor down there. I've custom made all of these AC lines, so there's actually a bulkhead fitting here and here. A hose will run between those two with the, let's see, I think that's the low pressure fitting. The AC, the actual like evaporator box is here. So this is a vintage air unit. It came with the kit. Well, I think I paid a little extra for it, but it did come with the kit. But I've moved it to the passenger side about 4 inches or so, because if not, it would have interfered with this battery that I have. So why did I worry about having the battery there? Trying to have all the batteries as close to the center of the car as possible, and as low as possible. So it barely fit, obviously, but it did, and I wanted to use that space. In this case, I just had to move the evaporator box a little bit, and it's going to work out okay, I think. So I spent a lot of time making some custom lines to get this all to work. Let's see, down here you can see the condenser. So a couple radiators. One is for the batteries and one is for the drive unit. And then the condenser is in front. Got one of the ports, and a sensor will go right there, a high pressure switch probably. AC is one of those things that I had to have living in Phoenix. Last car I had was a Roadster, was a Viper RT10, and the thing was just miserable to drive whenever it was hot out, and I don't want that to be the case with this car. So AC was a requirement. Let's see the receiver dryer there. So AC, I spent a lot of time getting the AC to work right on this thing, but I think it's going to be okay when it's all said and done at this point. Let's see, so suspension. So what we have here are C5 Corvette upper and lower control arms, knuckle, and hub. I've added 6-piston Wilwood calipers. It's a 14-inch vented rotor on the front. Went with slotted. Not a fan of drilled rotors, but I do like the look of slotted, and I don't think there's any like negative issues with them really. So I went that way. Obviously from Factory 5, we've got a adjustable coilover shock. I'm hoping that the spring rates work out. I think when it's all said and done, the weight of this car will be really similar to the way the GTM was designed, but it's one of those things we'll have to kind of see. On the back here, so I think these are 12.8 or 13-inch rotors, I don't remember exactly, but also vented design and 4-piston Wilwood calipers. Same deal, so we've got Corvette suspension back here, upper lower control arm. We've got the knuckle, and again did away with the leaf spring design for a coilover shock. Same thing, Factory 5, adjustable. Let's see. Suspension. So axles. I've got a set of factory Model S axles for this thing, and then I also have a set of factory Corvette axles. And then once I've got the motor mounted in its final spot, then I'm just going to have half shafts built using those ends, so that it's kind of hopefully a plug and play type ordeal. Moving around up here. So this is a Corvette steering wheel and column assembly. I'm not going to use the steering wheel, it's just on there just to have something. The steering wheel assembly column required a lot of modification to get it to work properly. It took a long time to figure out and get just right. But in this case, this motor here still functions properly, and the column will telescope just like a factory Corvette unit did. So pretty neat that it retains that. So a couple linkages, and then down here, and it's just a manual rack. So hoping that's not an issue. It doesn't seem to be for anybody else, but if it is, then I'll probably figure out some sort of electric power steering, I think. Would have to be, obviously I don't have a motor or an engine to drive a pump. Wilwood here also, so we've got no clutch, right? So single pedal for the brakes, and 2 masters, one for the front, one for the rear. Pretty standard, straightforward setup. You can adjust bias just by adjusting the rods. And then over here we've got the accelerator pedal. So this is out of a Model S, but the ironic thing is it is a Ford part number out of a transit van or something like that. So, obviously Tesla, when they were first starting building those things, they did use some parts off the shelf. I think the turn signal switches, turn signal levers, and the power window buttons were off of a Mercedes. So it doesn't surprise me that we're using, a Ford unit here. So there's that. Let's see. Front suspension we talked about, manual rack. So fluid pumps. Got a basically off of like a Ford Mustang Cobra 0304. This would be like an intercooler pump. I have 2 of those. So this one is for the batteries. You can see the outlet there goes to this T goes to this battery unit. The other side goes to the next battery unit, and so on and so forth. The way these batteries work is one side is in and one side's out, but the whole system, the whole battery system, has to be in parallel. You can't jump from one to the next. You have to have all of the inlets and all of the outlets on separate feeds, but they have to be in parallel. So something good to know if you do one of these yourself. On the other side here, I don't have it plumbed yet, obviously, or sitting in place, but I do have another of the same type of pump, and that'll be for the drive unit itself. Rocket is chasing flies. It's that time of year here in Phoenix, evidently. Let's see. So what do we got? So panels, steering. Yeah, I think that's getting to be about it, actually. So obviously missing some pieces. There's going to be some metal pieces, a wall here that goes underneath this battery. The battery tie down is missing still. I'm still like test fitting some of this stuff to make sure it's going to function properly and be in the right spot. I've had to move a lot of things. But you know, it's kind of the nature of the beast when everything is mostly custom on this car. I think probably next on the list is finishing. They kind of jump up and go through here. I don't have any brackets made to make this clean yet, but I'm going to 3D print. So I did these just as like a test piece. So the idea is to make a couple different sizes of these and use, 2, 3, and 4 hole versions to kind of keep the the hoses from chafing one another. Parking brake. So parking brakes straight out of the Corvette. Uses same, parking brake shoes that the Corvette does. Nothing crazy there. So I guess the cabling. So you can see I've got everything labeled, positive and negative. Again, each set of packs is in series. And I forget the exact, like which batteries are on which set. I think it's like so it's that small one of these large ones, the middle one, and then the 2 small ones that go back there will be on one set, and then this big one, this guy, that, and that are on the other set. And those will be all parallel, or those will be series 2, and then the 2 sets of series batteries will be in parallel to provide enough amperage for this drive unit without damaging the batteries. So coolant lines. So there's also this coolant line that runs up there. It's going to eventually plug in to that. On this side of the drive unit is the actual inverter itself. So it goes to the inverter first, and then the motor, and then the outlet is here, which will go to that hose. So a couple coolant lines still to run. I do need to get the kind of motor mounted in place first before I can get too far into that. Radiators up here. They're out of like a Honda Civic, pretty standard. Obviously I did choose to go with an aluminum radiator, but those are like OEM Honda Civic fans. Nothing crazy, but reliable is kind of like the idea behind that. And so yeah, that's where I'm at. My plan with this, I'm 11 months into the project currently, roughly, I think, since day one, since I took delivery of it at least. I think I've got maybe 2 more months before it's, we'll call it 3, before it's drivable without a body. I do plan on driving at that point in time, and then the body is going to take a good amount of time, obviously, also to get just right. So yeah, that's where I'm at. If you have questions regarding any of the stuff that I've done on this, feel free to leave a comment or send me a message. More than happy to share any of the knowledge that I've gained on this so far. And yeah, that's it. If you want to follow, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. I hope to have updates a little bit more often now that I'm starting to make some pretty good progress on this thing. So again, questions, comments, feel free to leave them, and thanks for watching.